Let me tell you something that might shake your foundation. Your healing doesn't begin with forgiveness, therapy, or time. It begins with understanding, and not just understanding anyone, but understanding your mother. Think back. Maybe she held you too tightly or not at all. Maybe she loved you loudly or silently. Maybe her love felt like a prison or a battlefield. Or maybe it was missing altogether. And here's the truth. Until you stop trying to fit your mother into the image of who you needed her to be, and start understanding who she was, you will stay trapped in pain disguised as strength. Your mother, yes, the one who gave you life, was not just a caregiver or a protector. She was a strategist, a survivor, a woman born into systems, expectations, burdens, and battles long before you took your first breath. You may have inherited your eyes or your voice from her, but you also inherited her trauma, her silence, her shame, her submission, and yes, her ambition. And unless you look at her through those lenses, you are not seeing her at all. You're just projecting your wounds onto a woman who, in her own broken way, was trying not to drown. You see, people are not good or bad. They are useful, afraid, threatened, or powerful. And your mother operated from that same reality. She might have chosen compliance over compassion, control over comfort, distance over tenderness, not because she didn't love you, but because she didn't know how to love without losing herself. That's what no one tells you. Mothers are not born whole. They are built from fragments, some ancestral, some circumstantial, some brutal. Understand this. Your mother's love might have come with a leash. It might have been conditional, manipulative, even cold. That does not make her a villain. That makes her a product of her own unhealed wars. Some women raise children while still bleeding from invisible wounds. Some weaponize motherhood because it's the only power they're allowed, and some never wanted to be mothers at all, but became them because of fear, pressure, or survival. You will never heal until you stop looking for a fantasy mother and start recognizing the woman behind the mask. She may have failed you, she may have protected you, she may have done both in the same breath, but until you can see her not as mother the role, but mother the human being, you will remain emotionally handcuffed to your past. This is not about blame, it's about clarity, and clarity, unlike forgiveness, doesn't require reconciliation. You don't have to fix your relationship with her to fix your relationship with yourself. You have to understand the forces that shaped her, so you can stop being shaped by them in secret. You are carrying habits, fears, and limits that were never yours to begin with. The moment you understand why she made the choices she did, even the wrong ones, you reclaim the power to make your own. But let's go deeper. Because understanding her isn't enough if you don't examine how you responded. How did you adapt? Did you become the fixer, the overachiever, the silent one? Did you turn your pain into perfectionism? Did you internalize her voice until it became your own inner critic? That's not healing, that's reenactment. You're not healing by pretending to rise. You're just repeating the game in a different costume. And some of you are waiting for her to apologize, to explain, to see you. You may wait forever, because power does not admit weakness easily, especially when weakness has been punished her whole life. She may never give you what you need, but here's the freedom: you don't need it anymore. You are no longer a child. You can grieve, understand, detach, and still rise. Healing is the act of breaking the emotional contract that says, until she changes, I cannot be whole. But I want to leave you with something more unsettling and liberating. What if your mother loved you and harmed you? What if she saved you and scarred you? Life isn't a clean ledger, and love, especially maternal love, often comes with contradiction. If you can hold both truths without needing to destroy one to make sense of the other, you are no longer in bondage. You are evolving. Understanding your mother's humanity is the first step to emotional liberation. That single realization is a door, and on the other side of that door is the version of you that has stopped trying to be seen, chosen, or approved by someone who may never have known how to fully see, choose, or approve of herself. For years, maybe even decades, you've carried the image of your mother not as a person, but as a symbol of warmth, of failure, of love, of absence of control. That symbol is heavy. It keeps you locked in a loop of expectation and disappointment. But when you finally allow yourself to dismantle the illusion and see the human behind the role, something shifts. You begin to unhook from emotional dependency. You begin to breathe on your own. Your mother was a woman before she was anything to you. Before she changed your diapers, held your fevered body, yelled in exhaustion, or disappeared into silence, she was a child herself. She was once taught how to behave, how to speak, how to suppress. Maybe she was never told she was enough. Maybe she was punished for needing too much. Maybe she was taught that her value only lived in sacrifice or silence. These truths don't excuse anything, but they explain a lot, because a woman raised to ignore her own emotions rarely learns how to nourish yours. A woman raised to obey power rarely teaches her child how to stand in theirs, and a woman who was never mothered cannot pass on what she was never given. That doesn't make her evil, it makes her wounded. And until you see that wound for what it is, you'll keep confusing her pain with your identity. Many people live their whole lives seeing their mother only through the lens of what she did or didn't give them. They measure her by her ability to protect, nurture, or love in a way that felt safe. But this measurement leaves no room for complexity. It leaves no room for the truth that a mother can love you and fail you. That she can try her best and still harm you, that her love may have been genuine but wrapped in fear, guilt, or control. Human beings are contradictions, and mothers are no exception. Once you strip away the fantasy, the idealized version of who she was supposed to be, you finally make space for the truth, and the truth sets you free not because it's easy, but because it's real. Understanding her humanity means seeing the context of her life. It means recognizing that she may have been surviving more than she was thriving, that she may have made choices from fear, not malice, that her silence may have been shame, that her harshness may have been the only armor she knew. When you finally understand that your mother is not a mythic figure, but a deeply shaped and possibly broken individual, you can start the process of separating her struggles from your self-worth. You can say, this is what she carried, and this is what I no longer need to carry for her. It's important to realize that no healing can take root in fantasy. You cannot heal by waiting for your mother to become someone she never learned to be. You cannot keep the image of a perfect mother in your mind and keep trying to make the real woman fit it. That only breeds resentment and longing, but when you see her for who she truly is, when you study her patterns, her emotional vocabulary, her fears, her upbringing, you develop something powerful, compassion without dependence. You begin to see the difference between loving someone and needing them to repair your emotional wounds. That shift is where your liberation begins. The truth is, we are not meant to stay emotionally fused to our parents. But when the mother-child bond is built on guilt, obligation, or idealization, that fusion lingers far into adulthood. Understanding your mother as a human, not a saint or a monster, breaks that bond. It creates healthy distance. It allows you to say, I understand you now, and because of that, I no longer need you to be different for me to be whole. That is not rejection, that is evolution, that is reclaiming your emotional freedom. When you finally see her clearly, something inside you becomes lighter. You stop internalizing her pain. You stop repeating her voice as your own inner dialogue. You stop carrying the guilt for needing what she couldn't give. And more importantly, You stop blaming yourself for the emptiness that was never yours to fill. Understanding her humanity allows you to begin the long but vital process of building your identity separate from hers. You are not her trauma, you are not her silence, you are not her sacrifice. You are the one who saw it all, named it, and chose something different. Power and survival often shape maternal behavior more than love or nurture. This is a truth that's difficult to swallow, especially when we've been conditioned to believe that mothers are born with an innate, unconditional capacity for selfless love. But the reality, if we are brave enough to face it, is far more complex. Many mothers do not parent from a place of pure love. They parent from a place of fear, of control, of survival instinct. Their choices are often less about what is emotionally healthy and more about what is socially acceptable. What keeps the household in order, or what keeps them emotionally afloat. When you understand this, a strange clarity sets in. You realize that much of what you internalized as a child, rules, punishments, even affection, was not always about you. It was often about what your mother needed to feel safe, powerful, or in control. For many women, motherhood is less about nurturing and more about managing, especially in environments where emotional expression was dangerous, resources were scarce, or patriarchy ruled the family dynamic. Women learned to operate like generals, not guardians. Power was not something they were given freely. It was something they had to seize, often through manipulation, silence, sacrifice, or emotional rigidity. If your mother used shame to control you, if she micromanaged your behavior, if she withheld approval until you performed well enough, it's likely she was using power as a shield, because in her world, love alone was not enough. Survival came first. We often talk about survival as if it's only about physical danger, but emotional survival is just as potent and just as brutal. If your mother grew up in a world where showing vulnerability led to being hurt, abandoned, or dismissed, she may have decided, consciously or unconsciously, that power was the only language worth speaking, that control was safer than connection, that independence was more reliable than intimacy. And if she raised you through that lens, then her actions were not necessarily about guiding you. They were about protecting herself from the threat of losing control, of being disrespected, or of reliving her own childhood helplessness. Some mothers love their children fiercely, but fear losing their authority even more. This is why so many of us were taught to obey without question, to smile when we were hurting, to succeed at any cost. Because when a mother feels powerless in the world, she will often try to reclaim that power within her home, by controlling her children, by demanding perfection, by punishing dissent. And for the child, this creates a warped definition of love, one where approval is currency, where affection must be earned, and where disobedience feels like betrayal. You may not remember it clearly, but you felt it. The moment when your needs threatened her peace, the time when your emotions were too loud, too inconvenient, too confusing for her to handle. In that moment, the balance shifted. You learned that being acceptable was safer than being authentic. That making her feel secure was more important than being understood. And that's how the cycle begins, where love is conditional based on how well you conform to her emotional landscape. But what you didn't know then is that those rules weren't about your growth, they were about her survival. There's a kind of emotional warfare that takes place in households like these. It's subtle, but it's deadly. Children become diplomats, mind readers, performers. They shrink, they overachieve, they disappear into silence. Not because they are weak, but because they are adapting to a system where power is currency and vulnerability is dangerous. And the architect of that system, more often than not, is a mother who never felt safe in her own skin, who never had power in her own home, who learned early on that being in control was the only way to avoid being controlled. This does not mean she didn't love you. It means her love was filtered through fear, her nurturing was filtered through strategy, her guidance was filtered through her need to maintain authority. And this is why, when you became an adult, part of you still feared her disapproval more than failure itself. Part of you still chased achievements not for joy, but for validation. Part of you still believed that being enough was always just one act of perfection away. That belief is not your fault. It was built, brick by brick, by a woman who may have confused power with love, because that was the only way she knew how to protect herself from a world that never protected her. To understand this dynamic is not to absolve the pain she caused, it is to decode it, because once you see her behavior through the lens of survival and power, not malice, you stop personalizing every harsh word, every dismissal, every impossible standard. You realize that much of what shaped your wounds was never about your worth. It was about her wiring, her history, her need to stay emotionally intact. And when you see that, you can begin to separate your truth from her trauma. You can stop fighting for her love the way a child does, and start building your life the way an adult must, with autonomy, clarity, and the power to choose a different legacy. Healing requires confronting uncomfortable truths without seeking blame. This is where many people get stuck, not because they don't want to heal, but because they're waiting for healing to feel good. They think clarity will come with peace, that self-awareness will bring immediate relief. But real healing is brutal before it is beautiful. It demands that you sit with the reality of what happened, what didn't happen, and what it cost you, not as a victim, not as a judge, but as a witness. It means opening your eyes fully to what your childhood actually felt like, instead of protecting the story you've told yourself to survive it. And that process begins by telling the truth, even if that truth is sharp, even if it cracks the illusions that held your identity together. You cannot heal if you are still trying to protect your mother's image. You cannot heal if you're still afraid to call neglect by its name or to recognize control dressed as care. Many of us grow up believing that loyalty means silence, that love means overlooking the ways we were wounded. But healing is not loyal to anyone's comfort. It is loyal only to truth. And the truth is this: until you are willing to look at your upbringing without sugarcoating or censorship, you will continue to reenact the very pain you're trying to escape. You'll find yourself in relationships that feel strangely familiar, reacting to people who trigger old wounds, chasing approval, fearing rejection, all because you've never gone back and honestly examined where those patterns began. But confronting those truths doesn't mean assigning blame. It doesn't mean turning your mother into a villain. Blame is easy. Blame gives you a target, but it also keeps you stuck. Because when you blame, you wait. You wait for an apology that may never come. You wait for change from someone who may never evolve. And while you're waiting, your life remains in limbo, defined not by your choices, but by their limitations. The deeper work is asking, what did this teach me about love, about safety, about who I had to be to feel wanted? These are not blame-filled questions. They are clarifying questions, and clarity is what sets you free. So many people confuse understanding with excusing, but the two are not the same. You can understand why your mother acted the way she did without justifying the damage it caused. You can see her pain and still hold her accountable in your heart. That's the paradox of healing. It holds space for empathy and accountability at the same time. And when you stop looking for someone to blame, you shift the focus from the past to your power in the present. You realize that no matter what was done to you, the responsibility for your healing is now yours, not because it's fair, but because it's necessary. This process also involves unlearning the reflex to minimize your pain because other people had it worse. Unlearning the belief that your feelings are too much. Unlearning the shame around speaking the truth of your experience. Because every time you downplay your wounds, you reinforce the silence that kept you small. And healing cannot coexist with silence. It needs voice. It needs honesty. It needs you to say, "This happened and it hurt," without rushing to defend the person who caused it. Part of confronting uncomfortable truths is acknowledging the ways you've adapted in unhealthy ways. Maybe you became a perfectionist. Maybe you avoid intimacy. Maybe you push people away before they can reject you. These are not random personality traits. They are survival strategies born from environments where your emotional needs were unmet or invalidated. And unless you recognize them for what they are, you'll keep calling them just the way I am, instead of seeing them as wounds asking for your attention. Healing begins when you stop judging these patterns and start tracing them. When you stop blaming yourself for having them and start understanding where they came from. And it's not just about what happened. It's about what you missed, the comfort you didn't receive, the encouragement you never heard, the safety that was absent. These are just as impactful as direct harm and often harder to name. But if you don't name them, you'll keep wondering why love feels foreign, why joy feels suspicious, why calm feels like boredom. You'll keep living in defense mode, even when no one is attacking. That's what trauma does. It programs you to live in reaction to what you once endured. And healing is the slow, steady act of choosing to respond instead of react. To create a life that isn't dictated by old wounds. The truth will not always feel good. It might break you open. It might make you cry for the version of yourself who was too young to know better. But you owe that version of you the full truth. Not the polite version, not the filtered version. The truth that validates your pain and makes space for your growth. Only then can you stop living in fragments. Only then can you start building a self that isn't made of protection and performance, but of presence and purpose. That is where healing lives. In truth without blame, in clarity without cruelty, in the courage to face what was, so you can create what will be.